Oh, gracious God, help us to become masters of ourselves so that we might become the servants of others. Take our minds and think with them. Take our lips and speak through them. Take our hands and work with them, and take our hearts and set them on fire with your Spirit. Amen. There is a wonderful website put together by an online magazine called Smith, and I'm going to share it with you with some hesitation because for me, it was like going down a rabbit hole. And it's a collection of 6-word memoirs. Perhaps you are familiar with it. If you just Google 6-word memoirs, you'll get to it. And it's gotten so popular that books have been published based on the hundreds of thousands of people who've submitted 6-word memoirs. But you can look at the books, but also, or buy them, but you can also go on and there's many categories. And it's people, both famous and just regular people, who have tried to distill their lives down to 6 words, or at least where they're at now, what's going on now. And of course, one of the recent ones is pandemic stories. One of them was, when will this all finally end? So yeah, like I say, there's been several books that have come from this. And the first one, I understand was not quite what I was planning. Oh my God, that's so great. It's really hard. I started to think about this, like, how would I just sum my life in 6 words? And some stories are poignant, like, I still make coffee for 2. And then there's a clever one. Well, I thought it was funny. That's from the comedian Stephen Colbert. I know, right? So, and some are tragic. And the inspiration for this project actually comes from an old story about Ernest Hemingway, who was challenged to write a story in 6 words. And he came up with this: for sale, baby shoes never worn. So of course, this made me think about today, about Easter. Because for all the complexity and mystery of this particular spiritual journey that we're on, and for all the millions of words that we use to try to explain this journey of faith, Christianity in and of itself has a 6-word autobiography. And it's this: Jesus is risen from the dead. There are about 775,000 words, more or less, depending on the translation, in the Bible, and not one of them makes sense without those 6 words. There are roughly 2 billion Christians in the world, and not one of us has anything to say really without those 6 words. These are the words of the breathless women carried from the empty tomb back to the disciples. And these are the words that have been passed down from person to person, from community to community, every day ever since. Sometimes in secret, sometimes in darkness, sometimes in celebration. It is these 6 words that have taken us from scattered, broken people who are lost to a world religion, for better or worse. It is these 6 words that have found countless individuals whose lives were dead, broken by pain and suffering, and given them new life. These are the words that are whispered at bedsides and shouted from rooftops and shared at dinner tables and workplaces and in neighborhoods. Neighborhoods like this. These are the words that have been forbidden by governments, both ancient and modern. And yet somehow they have still been spoken. They have still been shared. Jesus is risen from the dead. These are the words that the martyrs sang. These are the words that Dietrich Bonhoeffer shared with his students in Nazi Germany. These are the words that Oscar Romero was speaking as he was gunned down celebrating the Eucharist in El Salvador. These are the words of Martin Luther King Jr., words that he held fast to as he opposed the violent racism of our culture. These are the words that inspired Desmond Tutu's work in South Africa. And yes, they're even the words that Mother Teresa admitted had lost meaning for her at the end, towards the end of her life. But she still believed in its meaning for the world, and so she did not abandon her work for the poor. In some ways, I think of her as, fake it till you make it again, perhaps. Jesus is risen from the dead. Well, is it true? Is it true? C.S. Lewis once said, quote, "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." This is the story of our lives. It can be the story of our lives, the story of the life of the world, the story of life itself. This can be the story. The story of how life is stronger than death, how God's love for us is stronger than death. And so we hear these 6 words again. Jesus. Jesus is risen from the dead. How will these words change your story? How will these words inform your story? And to go back to that 6-word memoir, where in the essence of who you are do you hear the call to new life? Do you hear the call, the impact of Jesus is risen from the dead? Where in the essence of who you are and in these words are you being called to come out of the tomb you've been sealed in? Perhaps a tomb of fear, a tomb of anxiety, a tomb of dreams that have been lost or delayed? Where are you looking for the living among the dead? Where are you looking for the living in the deadness? And how will you receive this good news that has been handed from life to life, from heart to heart, from age to age, and is now handed on to you? How will these words change your story? Jesus is risen from the dead. How will it change the story of St. Paul's? How does your story, our story, what does that story still have to say to a culture at odds with itself, to a people in pain? Jesus is risen from the dead. How will you be sure that they hear this story of hope? Every day we get a chance to write our story again, or maybe to remind ourselves of what that story is, the truth of that story. It's no less miraculous as it was on that first day, and no less shocking, no less joyful, no less important, no less life-changing and meaningful. Jesus is risen from the dead. Run, run, and tell the others what you know. May it be so. Thanks be to God.